Welcome back to The Rewind. It is your host, Spencer Tracy. Thank you for sticking with me here as I took a little hiatus, spending time with family, watching some games for Thanksgiving. I hope you all enjoyed your Thanksgiving. But I got Evan Shibel on today. Went pretty long, so I'm going to keep this pretty short. I'm going out of town this weekend, so I'm also going to upload just a quick episode of me breaking down like the MLB offseason. So we didn't really touch on that as I had planned originally, but we'll be able to cover that later in the week. Hope you guys enjoy the episode. It was a great conversation with Evan Shibel. Welcome back to The Rewind. I am here with a second time or third time guest, Evan Shibel.
I don't know. That's a good question. Second, maybe third time. I can't remember. I feel like it's third time. We'll roll with third time.
I think I had you for like towards the end of a college basketball season, and then when the bracket came out, I had you on again. Yeah, because you're my hoops guy. You're my hoops guy.
Of course. Resident
I've been lacking on
CBB
hoops this year, especially since I'm out of the college hoops lifestyle. You know, being around the last 4 years. So we'll definitely have to touch on that.
For sure.
But we got a lot to cover. We had a Thanksgiving holiday off. The Rewind was off for Thanksgiving, as you would imagine. Let's talk about the best thing we saw this weekend.
Yeah.
What was the best thing you saw?
So I got to be honest. I think it was a little bit of a, I don't know. It was kind of a combination of a lot of things. I mean, I think that, the game gets talked about a lot. Michigan, Ohio State, always a very classic rivalry. I think it delivers every year, and I'm a huge fan of it. Obviously, I've had some family emotional ties in it for many years. So definitely was very excited for that on Saturday afternoon. Kind of had blocked off my Saturday for that to be the main focus, and it was great for about a quarter. And then Ohio State really showed that they are very clearly the best team in the country so far this year, and so to all credit to them. But I would say that it almost played a little bit of undercard to that Alabama-Auburn Iron Bowl on Saturday night. And it was another example of the Iron Bowl continuing to be, I don't know, a little bit of I don't want to say that the Michigan-Ohio State game has been kind of a foregone conclusion in most years, because obviously last year we had a crazy upset with a, nearly 500 team Michigan going into Ohio State and winning on the road. That was shocking to everyone. But I think just year over year, you get this kind of interesting outcome from the Iron Bowl. It's been a lot of very close contests, a lot of playoff implicating games, all those kinds of things. So I would just generally say, the Iron Bowl as a whole was probably the best thing I saw this weekend. But I think especially about that 10 to 15 minute real time window where we thought, man, is Auburn really going to do this again?
Right.
Or they were just kind of hanging around, needed to get the ball back, maybe had an opportunity late, those kinds of things. But yeah, I would just say generally the Iron Bowl was probably the best thing I saw this weekend, and really enjoyed just kind of that uncertain feeling, and also just being able to sit there and root for the underdog pretty easily. And this is no offense to Alabama. I think if Alabama was the lesser team and Auburn was number 6 in the country or whatever, I'd probably be rooting for Alabama, because being completely separated from that rivalry is fun to just watch from a neutral perspective and kind of wish for those upsets. And that's what I always love about the post Thanksgiving and just getting all those great rivalry games over the weekend. But yeah, definitely some really, really awesome stuff that I saw over a college football weekend.
Yeah, just kind of rooting for a good game, like when it's a big game. You don't have to sweat it out like you're a fan. For sure. I'm sure all those Bama fans weren't having as much fun as they were hoping to have with that game. And especially because with that game coming around, being a pretty watchable game on the weekend, is the Ryan Williams apparently not Ryan Williams, Jeremiah Smith.
Yes.
No. Yeah. Ryan Williams
for Alabama. Yes.
He was a Auburn recruit for that game when they had the 4th and 28 or whatever. 4th and goal.
The Tagovailoa.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah. So that was kind of cool to have a little fun fact.
For sure.
I was pretty covered up in work and family time. I didn't watch too much, but the big game, I didn't watch too much of it, of the game. I would probably say the Auburn game was really good too. I really liked watching Diego Pavia, the Vanderbilt quarterback. I think he ran for 130 yards or something, but he was able to use his legs. And then he slung the rock too. I think he had over 200 passing yards. Pretty clean game. Vanderbilt's right now in the college football playoffs, I
I
think.
believe so. Yeah, I think they were
Something like that.
14th, but with a road win at Tennessee, you would think that would kind of give you a little bump there,
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah,
taking
it definitely
Tennessee out of
helps.
contention a little bit and putting yourself in a really good spot. I got to be honest. I mean, I think, this has kind of been a pretty standard consensus from a lot of, fringe college football fans. Like, I'd probably consider myself, thinking like, oh, Vanderbilt, like, no way they're that good. It's like, but time after time this year, they've kind of really continued to prove the CFB world wrong. And rivalry week going on the road to Tennessee, which, as we know, Neyland is, one of the better environments in college football. And to be able to go in there and get a win is super impressive. And Pavia has done great to kind of lead that team so far this season.
Yeah, it was like their first time ever having 2 straight seasons of 10+ wins, or I think they had 10
Really?
wins. There was some stat like that because
Jeez.
they've been such a dump of there's the famous Saban quote of like
Right.
Vanderbilt like totally trashing, or Saban totally trashing
Yeah,
Vandy,
of
saying like
course.
they're like the easiest, like they're such an easy scheduled game or
Right.
whatever. But so good for them. They're
Times are
back in
changing
it,
there.
and their hoops team is playing pretty well too. They just won like
Yeah.
one of their invitational tournaments, kind
hmm
of put their name on the map.
Yeah, they're 8-0. They hopped in the top 25, or really shot up the top 25 this week. And yeah, they won out in the Battle for Atlantis, which, on a side, kind of a fall from grace for the Battle for Atlantis. That used to be like that and Maui were kind of the tournaments that you'd want to watch. And just with Players Era kind of swallowing up everything now, it's like you unfortunately don't get as many great teams in those tournaments. But still, I mean, as we know, and Spencer, that St. Mary's year in and year out, one of the best defensive teams in the country. They like to do this thing sometimes during games where they just decide that you're just not going to score anymore. Like they have, teams will go on all time, scoreless streaks. So the fact that Vanderbilt, even on a neutral site, put up 96 points against St. Mary's is pretty impressive. Like,
noticeable,
that's
right?
Yeah, definitely taking note there. Good win over VCU as well earlier in the tournament. Yeah, Vandy's not to be messed around with. The sad part is like their non-con schedule is just like not that exciting. They have another win on the road at UCF earlier in the season. Who
Yeah.
knows? And then you start. You got SMU playing at Memphis.
Central Arkansas,
Just nothing that exciting. And then so really, I mean, I think Vanderbilt at this point. Sorry, not to distract too quickly into our college basketball talk, but Vanderbilt might have a good shot at being our last undefeated team in the country. Because you see they don't get their first ranked matchup until January 7th, which is pretty deep into the season. Now, granted, you got to make sure you don't get clipped at Wake Forest, at South Carolina. That could definitely play a factor, but something to keep an eye on there.
Yeah, they play Bama, LSU, and then they could play our guy Sean Miller. And then they play Florida, who's, obviously the defending champs, and they play back-to-back teams with Arkansas. So it kind of starts to pick up, right?
Yeah,
So
of course. I mean, it's the SEC schedule for sure.
Yeah, they got time to pick up that,
those quality wins they
roster
need,
as much as possible. Kind of
sure.
brace them for any falling later in the year. But
right.
The biggest news of the weekend was the Lane Kiffin drama, which we thought was going to come to an end once he made a decision, but now it's talking about his decision. Lane Kiffin obviously was very successful at Ole Miss, kind of reviving that program. And yeah, he got now he had the best record with his team he's ever had. They're 11-1 right now, and I believe they're like 7th or 6th in the country. They're up there. They've got a bunch of noticeable wins in a year where they were kind of supposed to take a step back with Dart headed to the draft. Trey Harris was another big name that was great for them last year, but they always seem to kind of lose 1 or 2 big games that they were kind of supposed to win, and this year they haven't really done that. They've continued to play well all year, and finally looks like they're going to have one of the better chances to win a championship under Kiffin. And LSU totally craps the bed, and they need a coach, and they wrote down a pretty high dollar amount, and
which apparently Ole Miss matched.
Sure, I bet they did. But like we were talking before, the financial difference between Ole Miss and LSU. I mean, I'm sure LSU is a little bit more, they've got a little bit deeper of a bag, but it can't be night and day difference enough to make him, to persuade him to leave.
I think monetarily, like, I don't think that both salary wise and your NIL spend, I can't imagine it is that significantly different. Obviously, LSU, I think maybe a little bit stronger brand, just more success year over year in history. But yeah, it's a weird one to me. He had been given quite the run at Ole Miss. He had been, I don't want to say given a second chance, but just such a weird career, right? Like you have this Tennessee setup where it's like, all right, you've got it made. Like this is kind of the position you want. You always want to be in the SEC. You know, seems to be very loyal to Tennessee. And after a season, like ups and leaves, does the 3-year stint at USC, which was like
Yeah.
super weird.
Totally forgot about that.
As we've, no offense to Lincoln Riley, but as we've kind of seen, like kind of seems to be like where, coaches like kind of go to die at this point a little bit. Like it's just their careers, seemingly as you get out to the West Coast, it's like such a different market. They don't support it the way they do in the SEC. Like I'll never understand, like Lincoln Riley, that one shocked me when he left. Even flipping to the basketball side of things, like Eric Musselman, like you had it made at Arkansas and you could go to, like, he was kind of on that track of like, all right, the next blue blood that opens, like maybe you kind of think about like Eric Musselman as your next guy. Mm-hmm. And he ups and leaves and goes to USC in like a really weird move. And I mean, I haven't heard much about USC hoops, the last couple of years. So yeah, again, just a weird situation there. Obviously, then he flips back, gets brought back under Saban as an assistant because he realizes, like, all right, California's not for me. I want to, go back to the SEC. Gets a head coaching job at Florida Atlantic, obviously really does well with their program there, and then gets the Ole Miss gig in 2020. And, yeah, like, you kind of thought, like, all right, it was, I mean, I don't want to compare it directly, but a little bit of the Sean Miller situation of, like, kind of you went to the big time, not necessarily marred by the same stuff that, like, the Sean Miller career was, but I mean, definitely, was a little bit of a fall off there, and you get scooped back up by Saban because obviously he sees your talent and he knows that you want to be back in the SEC. You're kind of given this, I don't want to say second opportunity, but you're given this opportunity from Ole Miss. You kind of think like, all right, that's kind of when someone would typically write it out a little bit. But he's shown time and time again in his career that maybe he's not the most loyal guy, and he's kind of looking for that next big opportunity. All that being said, like I think it's going to work. Like I think LSU's going to be very, very good, and I think Lane Kiffin's going to be a probably one of the all-time coaches, of this generation of college football. Especially with all the turnover after Saban left and all that. It's kind of been like, all right, who's the best coach in college football? And no one's really taking great claim to that. And I think that Kiffin at LSU could set himself up well for a good opportunity to do so.
Totally. I mean,
Absolutely. Yeah.
And
for sure.
I don't like if you compare the resources that Ole Miss has in LSU, like you just exactly touched on, like it doesn't. There's not too big of a difference there, especially with how good the team he just left is. I mean, he got a guy, and what the quarterback's name is like Chanablis from like Ferris State, and he's like he's been phenomenal for him. He's been great. They were running back Keelan Lacey or something Lacey. He's been amazing. He just hit the portal too. So it's a weird signing. I didn't think he was gonna leave because of that reason. It seemed like he had really found a home, and he wanted to be the Ole Miss, football coach. When you think of Ole Miss football, you think of Lane Kiffin, kind of what Dan Lanning's going to, that legacy that he's building in Oregon right now. Like he's like, I'm a Duck. I'm not going to the NFL, all that. I thought that's where it was going. But the more this offer got talked about in the media and the more his decision was he was pondering this decision, it became pretty obvious. Like if he wanted to stay in Ole Miss, he would have said no. Like there's no way he would lengthen this whole story just to be like, nah, I'm going to stay.
I agree.
There's no way.
It was definitely a weird saga as to how it kind of all went down. But again, I don't know that I can say I'm all that surprised.
Right. And then I was thinking about college football and who or not the MVP, but who the Heisman is, which is basically the MVP. And, obviously the first like 4 names are quarterbacks, and then maybe a running back or wide receiver gets thrown in there. And I was kind of thinking like, which sports MVP like winner is the most controversial when it comes to who like how you should view an MVP. The MVP should be like the best player in the league, right? Football, it always goes to the quarterback.
Yeah.
Basketball, it's pretty much just the highest scorer, like a flashy guy, right? Baseball, it's just Shohei Ohtani now. And then in college football, it's whoever's team is ranked in the top 5 and it's going to win a national championship, and
Right.
if their quarterback is a stud or not. So do you have a league that comes to mind when you think?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think that for me, like, I don't know. I mean, I'm a Kansas City guy. Obviously, like, I'm a huge fan of Bobby Witt. Like, I consistently, and this is maybe a little bit of a baseball like war, wins above replacement argument a little bit, but I'm like, I make the argument that I'm like, let's say maybe not this last season, obviously, we'll use the Royals as an example, but 2 seasons ago, like, are the Royals making the playoffs if Bobby Witt doesn't play for the Royals? Like,
No shot.
absolutely not, right? Like, I think he has that much of an impact. So that is kind of my litmus test of, like, MVP. Now, I think I don't know. I think the definition of MVP is a little bit, like, it's very debatable.
Right.
I'm not saying that I believe it to be one side or the other, but the way you say it is most valuable player. Like, what player brings the most value to their team? And so in that MLB argument, I would say a player like Bobby Witt, who is on a team, a smaller market team with less, associated talent around him. I think the Dodgers without Shohei Ohtani or the Yankees without Aaron Judge are still making the playoffs, probably pretty easily. Like, I don't think you miss, not that you don't miss too much, because obviously there's such an immense amount of talent, in those individuals, but the rest of their teams are built to succeed as well without them. And that's where my thought process comes in of, like, if you're saying it's truly the most valuable player, like, it's probably be the guy that, if you take him off the field, exactly. If you take him off the field, then they're not going to perform that way.
Yeah.
So that's where, like, I always, like, I mean, and that's where I think, like, MLB, I could hear the argument, but that's where I think, like, I land on kind of the NBA as being the most debated, like, because I think that's a pretty easy argument to make in football, which, again, granted, very different, because every position is so independent in the impact that it makes, right? So, of course, if you take out the quarterback, like, we see this every year. Like,
Right.
you see a team, I mean, I don't even know, like the Minnesota Vikings this year. Like, they lose their starting quarterback and they go from, like, maybe a French playoff team to, like, oh my God, this team is,
Can't move the
horrific.
ball.
Right, exactly. Like, and we see this year, the Washington Commanders, right? Like, you lose Jaden Daniels and, Marcus Mariota is a serviceable backup. They have 2 wins, like,
Yeah.
it is so apparent in the NFL that the quarterback position means so much. So that's why I kind of land on the NBA, because I feel like it's really hard to define sometimes. Like, obviously stat lines can be what they are, but what is the overall impact that they're having from a value perspective? It's not always points, assists, rebounds. It can be a lot of other things too. A lot more of, like, the intangibles, as they say. So that's where I think basketball is probably the most controversial winner year over year. And I feel like every year you look at it, you're like, yeah, I can see that, but I could also make an argument for 2 or 3 other guys, right?
Right. It's like that almost reminds me of when Dwayne Wade just was asked about the GOAT debate between LeBron James and Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
And he said, hold on. Like, understand me. Jordan is the best basketball player I've ever watched, but LeBron is the best basketball player I've ever seen. I'm like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
And then the guy was like, he was like, oh, you're spitting, man. I totally follow. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Right.
It's like, I guess there's kind of a distinction, but what, best player you've ever watched versus best player you've ever seen? What are you talking about, Dwayne Wade? Yeah. Like you said, like, you hit a perfect. I think the Vikings example is amazing. Like, look how big of a difference Sam Darnold made.
Right.
Like, but the difference.
By the way, is it time to start respecting Sam Darnold a little bit? I mean, he's about to take a really hot Seahawks team into the playoffs.
The division, right? And he throws 5 picks. So
yeah,
I don't know. But yeah, like, you're right. The quarterback is such a valuable position. It's the Bobby Witt is a great, like, I think he got some votes this year, got some recognition. I would bet at some point in his career he's going to win at least one. It
just stinks because he's in the parallel of, like, the greatest player ever.
Like, you take it away. So I think, yeah, it's interesting. I think for me, college football, the Heisman is such a weird, because if you just give it to a quarterback who probably deserves it, but I mean, it takes, like, something historic for, like, a Charles Woodson to do that,
or or Travis Hunter.
Travis Hunter, right? But I mean, Caleb Downs at Ohio State is an awesome safety. And people are talking about him as being like a top draft pick and not even in the Heisman conversation.
Yeah.
Whereas Fernando Mendoza, like he's a good player, but I feel like you can name a lot more awesome college football players that are really balling out. And, I don't have a ton of Indiana listeners, so I won't get too much flack for that. But yeah, I just think that award, I mean, there's such a bigger pool to pick from, but that award is always a little shaky to me.
And I think too, like, if you're thinking about like the truest litmus test of like what player is, and I know the Heisman's not technically like the MVP award, but it's in the same light, right? And if you're thinking about the true definition, the true litmus test of value, I would think is the NFL draft. Like, I would think that the best college player is the guy that's going first overall in the NFL draft, because he's the one that's going to, and granted, I know it's a little bit team needs and all of that, but the guy going first overall is the guy that's probably bringing the most value to that team in college football, right? Mm-hmm. Of anyone, and he's the one that's going to get paid the most out of any rookie. He's the one that's going to, be first selected off the board. And you have such a run of Heisman players that like don't get drafted in the first round. Sometimes don't even get drafted at all. Like, I mean, I think that was that. I
always think back to like Luka Garza at Iowa.
Well,
he got picked like 60th, but he was dropping like 28 a game in college.
Didn't he win back-to-back Player of the Year title? Or
yeah, he might have. I'm not familiar with my Luka Garza.
He definitely won. He won at least one.
I know he was taking like late second round, if that. He was taking late.
But that's also like
get minutes in
playing
the
style. Like, it's
right. But
I do love. On that note, I do love seeing Zach Edey just prove everyone wrong and continue to just be a menace, because that's awesome.
Yeah.
Like,
our guy Pat Hammock's pretty happy about that.
Yeah, of course he is.
That's a good example of a guy who was just an absolute dominance on the court, and he was taken outside the top 10.
Yeah. Okay. Luka Garza only won it one time. Obviously, Zach Edey won it twice. Yeah. No, for sure. I mean, even look at your guy, Buddy Hield. Like, he was the best player in college basketball when he was there, and he was never seen as like this guy's gonna be a threat in the NBA.
Right.
So I think that's part of it. But I mean, even look at like back to the Heisman conversation. I mean, Derrick Henry was a second round pick.
Yeah.
And clearly someone missed the boat on that one, because that guy's been unbelievable. Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. I think it's just interesting to note that.
I agree. It's a fun conversation. All right, let's get going into college hoops. I'm gonna learn as much as everyone else right now about it. I know you said you haven't been like nothing, totally crazy has happened. It is still very early in the season. College Hoops for Dummies 2025-2026 season kind of beginning. We got through these like non-conference tournaments. We just wrapped that up this weekend. We're getting ready for conference play. What are you seeing from the kids on the court?
So I would say that, first of all, this is a really good time for the casual viewers out there to like start to pick up college hoops a little bit. It's like, all right, your football season is kind of wrapping up. It's time to start paying attention a little bit. This weekend is a great opportunity. There's just a loaded slate of good games. A couple of the like out of conference rivalry games of this weekend. You have a handful of those. You've got just a handful of other just fun ranked matchups, some neutral sites, some home and away, whatever. So I think this weekend going into, especially with all you have on Saturday is conference championships, which is not nothing, but obviously it just kind of tightens the schedule a little bit for college football. So that's definitely nice to have. I would say the biggest headlines thus far is you're kind of looking at this front three, front four that's emerging. In the AP top 25, it's your top four teams that don't have a loss yet. And that's going to be Purdue, Arizona, Michigan, and Duke. That's the order they're in the AP top 25 so far. Mm-hmm. I'll give you a little bit on each of them. Purdue has continued to look great. Braden Smith is, by the way, chasing after the all-time assist record this year. I think he has to average like 8.5 or something like that per game for every game this year. And they have to play like 36 games, so I think they'd have to at least get to the second weekend of the tournament, depending on how they do in the Big Ten Conference. It's totally possible. Like, it's an outside chance, excuse me. It's an outside chance, but definitely something to keep an eye on. Braden Smith probably going to be your National Player of the Year if he does play to that level. I think he's not going to be the sexiest when it comes to points per game and all that, but assists per game, he puts his team in a really good spot to win. Yeah, currently he's averaging 9 assists per game right now, so just keep an eye on that one. Purdue, great schedule. They went on the road to Alabama in a true road game and beat them by 7. That was a great victory for them early on. Alabama, very talented team, top 10, top 15 in the nation right now, so good win there. And then they beat one of my favorite teams in the country this year, led by JT Toppin and Texas Tech. They beat Texas Tech by 30 points in the Baja Mar Championship this past week. I think, a week and a half ago maybe. Nassau in the Bahamas, so kind of a weird, you're in a small gym, neutral site, whatever, but pretty crazy. I mean, I was shocked to see that score line, coming out of that matchup. I thought it was at least going to be a fairly competitive game. And now you just get another opportunity. Iowa State's coming into play at Purdue this weekend on Saturday. It's an 11 a.m. game, so just a perfect top 10 matchup to start your Saturday of sports. That's going to be a really fun one. They also play Marquette, and then they play Auburn as well before they start their Big Ten play. So just a lot of really good games there to kind of get a true feel on Purdue. But I think if they're still undefeated through all of those games, like, they don't play a ranked Big Ten team until mid-January. So definitely keep an eye on the Boilermakers to stay hot out of the gates. But after kind of I don't want to say disappointing season last year, because obviously you get to the Final Four, but after being probably a little bit frustrated with how it ended for Purdue, I think Matt Painter came back with a vengeance, and just continues to put together great teams and just fun teams to watch, just objectively. I think Mackey Arena is a great arena to play in. I think watching them continue to do what they do night in, night out, and win the way they do is super entertaining.
Totally.
Keep an eye on Purdue. Arizona kind of made the first big headline of the season. They played Florida in Vegas on the first night of the season on November 3rd, which was awesome. Like, just great game from the jump. And Arizona got a 6-point win. And then it was like, wow, man, they're really good, or was this just a moment thing? Was it early season, whatever? Well, then they double back and they go to Stores and play UConn, and they beat UConn by 4 at their place, which that to me is like the ultimate. That's one of the best wins you're going to get all season this year for any team. So good to see Arizona really find their footing. They too have Auburn and Alabama coming up this next kind of 2 weeks. So again, 2 opportunities to play some more good talent before they get into their Big 12 play. Obviously, they have at BYU this year. They've got at Kansas this year, Texas Tech and BYU at home, at Houston. You got Iowa State in there, Kansas again. So, I mean, just going to be a loaded schedule for Arizona this year, but they're showing a lot of talent to start the year. And then third is Michigan right now, who I think arguably probably
right now.
I mean, they probably have the best they probably have the best resume. I mean, I don't know. You could say like Arizona because they have 2 wins against top 3 teams in the country with UConn and Florida, and one of them being on the road. That's great, but just the volume of their wins, Michigan. Yeah. I mean, beating Auburn by 30 in the the second night of Players Era was. I'm not gonna say I wasn't like shocked by it, but I mean Auburn had the late transition with bringing in a new coach a couple weeks before the season. Just don't really know what you're going to get out of that. Obviously, roster's still the same, but it was kind of understandable to see him, get waxed like that. And then they're coming into play Gonzaga in the Players Era Championship, and you're like, oh, this is going to be a all-time game. Like, I was super excited. I was ready to like sit down and just like glue myself to the TV. I'm like, this is going to be haymakers thrown back and forth, whatever. Yeah, no, Michigan just absolutely pummeled them. I mean, they won by 40 points. To see a top 15 game end in a 40-point deficit is truly remarkable stuff, no matter at any point in the season. So far, Michigan's kind of been led by this Yaxel Lindenberg cat. He is, I believe, transfer from, UAB. So 2 seasons with the UAB Blazers. He has looked great so far to start this year, which has been exciting to watch for Michigan. And yeah, I mean, it's going to be, if you get that level of play out of them and you get some of those matchups against Purdue, I mean, let's see, when do they got Purdue on their schedule? They play Purdue at Mackey. So they only play them once, unfortunately. But yeah, I mean, at Mackey on February 17th, like, clear your calendar now. I mean, that game is going to be that game's going to be a really good one. Other leaders for the Wolverines to kind of keep an eye on. You've got Merez Johnson I believe another transfer. Yes, from Illinois last year, so kind of making the in-conference swap there. But he's been great, averaging 13 points per game, 6 rebounds a game. So yeah, I just think that this Michigan team is a super fun one to like kind of keep an eye on as the season develops. Their upcoming schedule, let me just look for you here. They've
looks
got
like Rutgers, Villanova.
Yeah, I mean nothing super exciting,
Maryland.
really. Yeah, I mean, yeah, maybe that Indiana game. Indiana's still undefeated. They're looking really solid. Darian DeVries, first-year head coach there. So definitely keep an eye on that one. But it'll be interesting. I think Michigan has a good chance to be looking like they're in a pretty good spot. Turning into February a little bit. So,
and then real quick, going back to the Auburn getting kicked.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on that coach?
So
it's early, right?
Yeah, so it's Stephen Pearl. So Bruce Pearl, obviously, great established coach, and has had a lot of success with Auburn and with Tennessee prior. He kind of in a weird, like, I obviously don't know all the details, kind of just in a weird, like, out of left field, a couple weeks before the season, was like, hey, like, I'm just going to promote my son and I'm going to step aside. And there was a lot of speculation that because he had been really vocal about wanting to be involved in politics, and I believe there's a state seat up next year for election, that people were like, okay, well, that's why he's getting out kind of around this fall election cycle time so he can have a full year to campaign if he is looking to, go into U.S. government, which what a turnaround that would be. Apparently that's not what he's going to do. He's just going to stay within the Auburn community and work in some sort of kind of public policy role there, which is really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing to say about Stephen Pearl yet because we don't really know anything. Like, he was the assistant. Well, he played under his dad, sparingly at Tennessee. And, then he's an assistant for his dad for 6 years at Auburn. He's the associate head coach for 2 years at Auburn. And then he gets promoted to head coach. And it's just like, he has zero head coaching experience. Like, I'm sure that they were, in discussions of like, hey, we want you to, eventually be the head coach. And I'm sure there was a lot of, exactly. Like a lot of conversation going into that, but I don't know, man. I mean, he's off to a 6-2 start. Like I don't know really if there's a ton to say, about Auburn at this point. I mean, let me just look at their schedule. I mean, losses to Houston and Michigan. They got a win over St. John's, which is great for them.
That was another team.
And a win over Oregon as well. But they got to go at Arizona here on, Sunday or Saturday. You got NC State this week, which is interesting. You still got to play Purdue. I think things could kind of get out of hand. It was funny. There was we were talking, a couple of my buddies. We were talking all right, there's usually 3 teams from the preseason top 25 every year that don't make the tournament. Like that just is a pretty consistent number over the last however many years. And of course, I was like, all right, who do we think? And Auburn, of course, was the only one that was unanimous across the 3 of us. And I think that is simply because of the coaching change. But the positive for Stephen Pearl and for Auburn fans is you have so many opportunities that even if you just clip one of these top 5, top 10 teams, it's probably going to be enough with the schedule that you have to at least keep you in the conversation, So, and again, they still have, Keyshawn Hall, Tahad Pettiford, unbelievable talent, guys that are, have been proven, either elsewhere or with Auburn. So the fact that they're able to keep the roster intact is super impressive and I think a positive, but who knows? We'll see. It was crazy. They went to overtime against Bethune-Cookman on the first night of the season, which was when everybody was like, oh boy, is the experiment going to work here? And then they ended up beating Merrimack by 2 on the second game of the year.
Geez.
But I think they found their footing a little bit, just in time to play Houston. And it was only a 1-point loss to Houston, which, I think Houston's one of the better teams in the country this year. So that's definitely something to keep your head held high about. So we'll see. We'll see what the deal is with Auburn. I don't know that you can say anything definitive just yet. But and then Duke, I think, is that 4th team that you obviously got to keep an eye on the top. They're going to continue to put together great teams. I mean, Cam Boozer obviously leading the way for them. Has been great. They don't, I don't want to say they don't have a great win yet because, they won against Kansas on a neutral, Arkansas as well on a neutral. in Chicago. So they have some good wins, but I wouldn't say they have any great wins. Now, this is a good lead into tomorrow night. They play Florida. That is in the ACC SEC, so that is at Cameron Indoor. So that'll be a heck of an environment, defending champs coming in there. And then you flip around, and on Saturday, you get to go play at Michigan State. So I will say, I will think you will be able to definitively say, if Duke is going to be like a number 1, number 2 seed pretty much after this week, because that's back-to-back tests. You get a home and an away against 2 of the 10 to 15 best teams in the country. Michigan State being one of the hottest teams right now in the country. So I think you'll get a really good feel there. And the ACC this year is not as much of a kind of pushover as it has been in past years. Duke does get Louisville, who's a top 10 team right now, and they look very, very good out the start. Pat Kelsey's really starting to build something there. And then you also have North Carolina, obviously, always going to be competitive. And then Duke has this weird game against Michigan in the middle of February in D.C., which I'm super in on. Sweet. Break up the conference play a little bit. I think it's good for Duke's sake, too, because I think they're realizing, all right, we're kind of getting lulled to sleep in the ACC a little bit. It's, and that just is the reality currently. There's not a ton of high-profile teams outside of Louisville's kind of had this late resurgence, and obviously Duke and North Carolina. But outside of that, it's all right, there haven't been a ton of, great, top of the, college basketball programs, teams coming out of the ACC year after year for the last few years now. So they were all right, hey, let's counter that and start scheduling some non-cons in February just so we can, stay sharp and play those really high-level games, which I think is definitely smart on John Shire's part for Duke and to keep his team sharp.
Yeah. Yeah, Duke is always going to be in that running, right? They've got Boozer, they got some more replenished 5-star freshmen ready to kind of be the 1-year foundation, and then I'm sure they're bringing someone else when the other guys are off and running.
Yeah.
St. John's was a team that was, obviously a 1 seed and took the league by storm a bit. I know I had them going pretty far last year, and that obviously they didn't amount to. I'm sure they didn't go as far as they had hoped. They're the only 3-loss team in the rankings. They are to pretty worthy opponents, right? Alabama,
for sure.
Iowa State, and Auburn. I think those were all neutral sites, except for maybe Alabama.
Alabama was at home. That was in the Garden. And then I believe you're correct. Iowa State was at Players Era.
And so was Auburn.
Auburn was also Players Era, yes.
So not a major reason to hit the panic button, but I remember the one thing from last year was very athletic, very defensive reliant team. That team was nuts on defense. There was a lot of hoop nerds, basketball nerds that were just losing it over that one clip of the defense just flying around for 30 seconds, and they forced a shot clock violation.
For sure.
You gave up 74 to Quinnipiac. I mean, Alabama's a big off. Quinnipiac.
Quinnipiac, yes.
Quinnipiac, yeah. It wasn't smooth. Gave up 103 to Bama. Iowa State put up 80 plus. Again, I get these are good teams. Baylor put up 80. Last year, I feel like we were seeing 50s, just constantly, even against really good teams. Is there a little bit of a step back coming for St. John's?
Yeah. I don't know just yet. I agree with you. It definitely, I don't know that it's time to panic by any means, but definitely, cause for concern here. I'm not going to say that they need to win out their non-con, but I think it would be a very massive, confidence booster for that team and that program. You have Ole Miss, talented team, definitely need to win that game, especially at home.
Yep.
Iona, no really further commentary to be said there. Sorry to my guy Bobby Garrity, who's on staff there. Love him. Yeah. Program's just not that St. John's level. Obviously, DePaul gotta get that win to start out your Big East play, and then you get Kentucky and Harvard to kind of wrap up your non-con. I think Kentucky's a very beatable top 25 team this year. It's a CBS Sports Classic. It's in Atlanta, so it's going to be a neutral site with Kentucky fans because they just travel so well. But yeah, I think you could almost argue that St. John's needs to win out their non-con before getting into conference play because, as you and I know, as much as they might be the favored team in most of their Big East games, Big East is a dogfight. And some of those environments, early on that you can get into, you get yourself in a weird spot at Creighton on January 10th oh, you're down 6 at the under 12. Like, this could get out of hand quickly. You know, like, you totally can get yourself into some weird spots. You got to play Villanova early on the road. You got to play Xavier early on the road, which we can get to, Xavier later. Yeah, just could definitely see St. John's putting themselves in a weird spot where they look up and it's all of a sudden like, oh my God, we have 9 losses and it's, mid-February. Like, I don't want to say they're going to miss the tournament or even are anywhere near that, but you got to start to convert some of these big wins. I think Kentucky's going to be a massive game for them, to ensure that they get that early quad one, type win on the schedule. Because outside of maybe Baylor, I don't really think they have one yet. So I think that's going to be really, really important for St. John's coming down the stretch here of non-con.
Yeah, and then looking at the Big East, before we hop into the sudden rise of the Pitino era down at Victory Parkway, the Johnnies that we just discussed, I mean, they're 4-3. They're towards the bottom. Marquette, who I just looked at, is 4-4.
Marquette's not good. Like, I'm not even gonna sugarcoat it. I'm living in
Clayton
Milwaukee now. I'm around Marquette people all the time. The team's not good. Like, there's not a lot of talent there. I think they'll be fine. Big East wise, I think they'll
bump in the Shaka Smart.
Well, the Shaka Smart situation is, I respect it a lot, his effort to not use the portal and to develop players from the ground up and all of these things. I think they're great, sportsman characteristics about him. I think that's awesome. I want it to work for him because I do want him, and like Matt Painter's another good example of someone that really doesn't use the portal all that much. I want that to work because I do think there needs to be some amount of teams or players or whatever that have success without utilizing the portal. Because I just think that's good for the balance of the sport as a whole.
Agreed.
That being said, it's definitely concerning. If you're a Marquette fan, like, yeah, it's panic time. Like, I'd be concerned.
Okay, and then DePaul, no longer a pushover. They're 5-3, and we kind of got the feeling of that last year, right? They had some, outlier moments where it's like, oh, there's DePaul. Look at this guy's not bad. They've got the new coach. I don't know his name, but they've got
Chris Holtman. Chris Holtman fired from Ohio State, and then yeah. And
okay, well,
DePaul job.
I mean, nothing crazy, but just it's no longer a pushover program.
No, I mean, I think your focus is right now. Seton Hall's in the top 50 of the net right now.
Yeah.
Their schedule hasn't been that exciting in but a victory over NC State is not nothing this year. That's a very talented team. They lost to USC by 2, which is a great game as well. So we'll see. We do get, I mean, Seton Hall, yeah, their non-con's just not that exciting. I mean, they play Kansas State on the road. I don't really, frankly, know what to expect from K-State this year. So, yeah, it's kind of I would say it's a bit of a toss-up with Seton Hall as to where they're at right now, but I think they're off to a great start. You never know what you're going to get from Butler. Obviously, UConn's going to be UConn. Dan Hurley's still a great coach. They got Terrace Reed back, which is huge for them, on both on the offensive and defensive glass. Villanova is off to a solid start. No no Big Five, Philadelphia slip-ups like they've had in the past.
Right.
So that's definitely good to get through that. If you're Villanova, you beat Temple, you beat LaSalle. Kind of took care of business there. You did lose to BYU in the first game of the season. I don't think that's a bad loss. You only lost by 5. And they got a couple good tests coming up on the schedule. They got Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pitt all in the next week. So I think 3, solid games there. Just don't get caught looking ahead because don't forget, you still got to play Penn in the Palestra on Saturday. So those games can always get a little awkward. But
right.
But yeah, I think Villanova is definitely not something to shy away from so far. Georgetown, I think, has looked great so far this season. So everyone that's kind of
was going to pick it up.
Yeah, everyone that's been kind of freaking out about this, is the Big East in turmoil this year? Like, no, like they're gonna be just fine. The problem is when you have a team like St. John's take so many losses early in the season. Like, once you get into conference play, if UConn's the only ranked team. Like, unless someone rattles off like a St. John's or pick it a Villanova or whoever, or a Seton Hall, unless they rattle off like 7 or 8 wins in a row, they're not going to get enough attention to kind of be in that ranking or in those rankings. And I think that's the unfortunate part is if there's no ranked win opportunities, it's going to be a hard time to kind of get the national attention, even though I think some of those teams are some of the better teams in the country for sure. It's definitely going to be a difficult ask for them to be like, oh, hey, well, yeah, Seton Hall has 8 losses because they play in a very difficult conference in the the Big East, but like, no, really, like they're definitely one of the better teams in the country. Like it's, oh well, but they only have one ranked win over, you know, third ranked St. John's at home.
Right.
Like that's just not that exciting, you know. So it's, if there's a lack of ranked teams after non-con in the Big East, teams that just take care of business are not going to get on that national radar. Like you
Right.
have to go and rattle off kind of these longer win streaks to really.
Non-conference success is
It's massive
pivotal
for a
in
conference
order to
like
set
the Big
up
East.
a
Absolutely.
conference. I
Yes.
see what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So
Give me 60 seconds on Xavier hoops.
I mean, I think that it is so interesting. I'm not concerned at all about the first couple games of the year. Like, I mean, if you look at any great team, you know, especially even ones that Xavier's had over the last couple years. Like I remember our sophomore year, you and I, that team that went to the Sweet 16 and played against Texas and played them a very close game in Kansas City. That team, I think, only beat Montana by 4 or 8 or something. It was a single digit game in the you know, early on in the season. That stuff just happens on the first night of the year. Like, you know, it's good that they gutted it out. You know, same thing with Lemoyne, still a little bit of rockiness.
Everyone's from the portal, so no one's played with each other.
Exactly.
Not even the one guy who's been on the team.
Right. And then
Roddy
everyone
Anderson.
freaked out about the Santa Clara loss. Santa Clara is one of the top 50 best teams in the country. Period. Full stop.
They had a
like
really good freshman.
they're in and year out. They've got a great coaching staff. They have a great program. You know, Santa Clara is going to continue to be good. And I think because it's not like as recognized of a brand, maybe, that people freaked out about it. Like, yeah, I didn't expect they were going to lose by 20, you know, but at home for sure. But like, I very much was like, they're probably not going to win this game. The loss at Iowa, I'm not concerned about at all. Iowa's an unbelievable team, great coach. Like they're going to crack into the top 25 here pretty quick.
I mean, that's half your Drake team right there.
Exactly. Yes.
Those are your guys.
Yeah. No, they're a very good team. So then steadying the ship with the win over Old Dominion, and then, man, I just really wish you could have clipped that game against Georgia.
Yeah.
Because if you do, not only do you get yourself the chance to play a better team in Clemson than West Virginia, but also like that's just going to be a big win on the resume for later in the season. So
that's going to come back in March.
For sure. For sure.
We're going to see that quad loss, Georgia.
Yeah. So no, definitely would have been nice to clip that one, but you know, we can't have them all. And it was good to see that they turned around and fought back and got a good win over West Virginia. Obviously taking care of business against A&M Corpus Christi and tonight against St. Francis, PA. But it's just crazy. There was very much this sentiment of like, if there's ever going to be a year that, you know, Cincinnati's going to do it and go win at Xavier, which they've only done once since the Cintas Center was opened in the year 2000, may I remind you.
Wow.
Like, there was a sentiment that was like, if they're ever going to do it, like, this year's probably the year. Like, you know, Bettino's rebuilding. Like, he's kind of starting from scratch. He didn't really have a ton of time in the portal. The team's not that talented. Clearly, they're shaky early on in the season, whatever. Well, then Cincinnati goes and loses to Eastern Michigan at home last week.
Yeah.
And it's just like, whoa, like, hold on. Like, this might actually be a really, really good game on Friday. You know, there's kind of a refreshed excitement about the season, I think, for Xavier fans. And especially just, you know, they're going in with a much more positive mindset into Friday.
Sure. Yeah.
And I think that UC is back to like oh God, is this happening again? Like, you know, like, and yeah, it just is exciting. It's making for great theater. I cannot wait for Friday. Obviously, you and I are both going to be in the building, that's awesome. I mean, you can't beat that.
Did you see the Wes Miller press conference after that Western Michigan loss where he said, I'm not an excuses guy. I don't want to make excuses. Yeah. And the next 2 minutes were, you know, traveling's hard. He just went in on it's like, you can't say something and then but. That just negates what you said before the but. I'm not an excuses guy, but okay, now I see where this is going.
Totally. No, I mean, I'm with you. I respect Wes. Obviously, as a Xavier fan, just objectively, he's my favorite coach in UC history because he can't beat Xavier. So that's great. But yeah, no, I think it'll be interesting. I do think that if he doesn't win the shootout this year and Cincinnati doesn't make the tournament, I think he's going to get canned. You have to.
Did they just give him an extension?
Sure. Yeah.
Like that's another thing I meant to bring
it's kind of irrelevant, I think.
Is they gave him a 7-year extension. I would bet he is not an LSU coach for 7 years. Every college contract.
So that's an interesting.
Every college contract that's given out is like long term, and long term contracts in sports never really pan out. Like you're not gonna be, and if they do, you've been moved around a couple times within that contract. I
Sure.
don't understand. Like, I've never seen a coaching contract be like, so over many amount of dollars for 3 years, 4 years, and then we'll reassess in that time.
Right.
It's like, and I get it. Like, coaches want that, sustainable,
Security.
that kind of
Yeah.
security, right? And even if they do get fired, you still get, like, what's his name? The
Your
LSU guy just got
buyout,
fired.
yeah.
Kelly is still guaranteed like $50 million for the next couple
sure.
years, and that's exactly why you don't do that. Like, even though you hired an attractive name like that, you still are gonna leave yourself with a ton of dead money. But that's that's just one thing I find weird about coaching. Yeah, I'm excited about the UC game. I bought my tickets after like the first couple bad losses because tickets totally dropped.
Get the value play.
I didn't really expect the kind of narrative of this game to shift as much as it did.
I agree.
Especially with not expecting Western Michigan or Eastern Michigan, whoever they lost, beat.
Is it Eastern Michigan?
Whoever they lost to, to beat them at their own home court.
Yeah.
Expectations. I mean, maybe they went in the wrong direction. Maybe I'm just going to be upset. I've only bought 2 tickets to Xavier UC games, and one of them was last year, and they lost that one in heartbreaking fashion. You were there with me.
Yep.
So I'm hoping we don't go 0-2 when I buy tickets to the crosstown shootout.
Yeah. No, I'm hoping so as well. I think it definitely has a chance to be a pretty all-time weekend. So
for sure.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
Yeah. Let's take a quick break. We'll get into 60 seconds, 6 questions in 60 seconds, and then we'll talk a little bit of hockey and we'll wrap up. All right, welcome back. We are here with the Rewind's favorite segment, 6 questions in 60 seconds. Shibel, we've had 3 guests on since reviving the show, and each guest has gone over a minute. However, I do like to encourage instead of just give me a yes or no, you can add a little bit of flavor to the question if you wish. Yeah. So here we go. I got 6 questions for you in 60 seconds. You ready?
Hey, man.
Here we go. Most exciting hoops team to watch so far?
Michigan. I think it's pretty objective.
Number of Xavier basketball wins this season?
Oh, God. Okay, what are we at right now?
17?
Maybe 18?
In that ballpark.
Yeah.
Chiefs are making the playoffs?
No.
Okay. Do you have a Super Bowl winner?
No. We were having this conversation earlier. I have confidence no one.
Yeah.
Truly. Like, I don't.
Right. I agree.
I mean, I guess I would maybe say, I don't know. I think if the Lions get in, they could probably do it.
Most disappointing NFL team this year?
Not considering injuries. I mean, God, it's a tough one. I feel like I'm missing like some obvious ones in here. Maybe the Texans a little bit.
Okay, yeah.
Like, I think they were kind of touted to be this like really great team. The Jets, like they were. I mean, not that they was gonna be like great, but there definitely was some preseason expectation of like, oh, they can probably make the playoffs. Like, what?
Yeah. Best nickname in sports right now?
It has to be an active player.
If you can't think of one off the spot, just give me an all time.
Well, I've always said the great one is like for Wayne Gretzky. I mean, he's literally called the great one. Like, that's so sick. I'd maybe say in the same round. I mean, grade 8 Ovechkin is great. I mean, Sid the Kid too. Like, that's an awesome, like, just good flow of a nickname. It is funny to continue to call him Sid the Kid, even though he's definitely getting close to retirement age. But yeah, I think hockey just generally has the best nicknames.
Yeah. No, I agree. For grade 8, the great. That's hard to beat.
Right. he's literally called the great one. That's his nickname.
Sticking on the ice. I've watched more NHL than I have the NBA this year.
So, okay, I would say from my perspective, and tell me if I'm wrong, this seems a little bit to be kind of similar to like my revival into baseball of like with the Royals, like it was like, oh my God, we got this Bobby Witt kid. It's like, it seems to be kind of good, whatever. So for you, like having a hometown guy in Macklin Celebrini that is kind of bringing eyes to the sport that wouldn't typically be there. Is that kind of, do you feel that's driving a lot of why you're watching more Sharks hockey?
I would say watching the Four Nations. I really enjoyed that. What really hit me
this is a perfect parallel because the reason that I was like, all right, I'm going to try and start watching more baseball, whatever, 2 seasons ago, was because it was coming off the introduction of the pitch clock at the World Baseball Classic, which I remember being awesome. Which was great. It was great TV. And then Four Nations was freaking awesome last year. Like, that was such a home run.
And then I went to a couple of games live, and I went to a Columbus Blue Jackets game.
You went to the tank? Oh, you went to
the Columbus Blue Jackets game, and they played the Penguins. God. And that game went into a shootout.
Yeah.
The Penguins went up like 2 goals in
Mhm.
the third, going into the third period, and the Blue Jackets tied it overtime, and it was just like, you know, whip with the chuck going back and forth, like one
Sure.
fast break, he misses it. Now the other team's on a fast break, no one
Mhm.
scored, shootout. It was electric. The Blue Jackets ended up winning, which enhanced the experience, right, with all the crowd and
Right.
everyone
Home
into it.
crowd. Yeah, yeah.
And I just left that, and I was like, I mean, that was one of the best games I've ever seen. And I barely knew what icing was. Like, I barely knew the rules of the
Right.
game.
Yeah.
And I'm a big believer in, like, baseball is my number one sport, and a lot
Of
of
course.
people don't enjoy that sport, which is, whatever. But if you understand the strategy in the sport and you
Mhm.
have enough desire to kind of want to and try to learn it,
Yeah.
I think you can fall in love with any sport. Like, name it, it doesn't matter, like college level, pro level, cricket, whatever. Once you learn the sport and why players do certain things, why teams do certain things, if you want to get into like the roster movement, the front office behind it too, that's great. But
Yeah.
once you learn about it and you kind of understand the value of the talent that the players have, like a Bobby Witt, why is it so much fun to watch Bobby Witt? Why is it so much fun to
Well,
watch
and
Shohei
I can.
Ohtani capture history?
Well,
And you
exactly,
watch
and
the World
like,
Series.
yeah, I was gonna say, like, I can tell you why, because when part of the reason, like, I was watching so much more baseball is because, yeah, would I pay attention to all 9 innings, every single out? No. But the second that I hear, like, up to bat Bobby Witt Jr., like, yeah, I'm gonna stop and watch, because it's that possibility of, like, yeah, you could see something great. So it's, sure, maybe you're not watching, every Sharks game super closely, but the second that, like, okay, Macklin Celebrini just hopped on for his shift, like, yeah, you want to see that because you've seen, the highlights, you've seen some stuff yourself live that is just like, you're like, wow, I've never seen that before, and I think that
Yeah,
that's,
and then on top of it, everyone's talking about how your team has one of the next, generational
yeah,
players, and he's
it's so
going on. He's
exciting.
like one of the highest scoring points. So that's all. That's a huge plus. So yeah, I've been watching the Sharks a lot more recently. They're playing the
Of course.
Mammoths right now.
Yes.
It's 3-2 at the end of the first period, which is a nuts score.
That's exciting.
That's awesome. But you've been following hockey a lot
Mhm.
longer, and I don't want to run too far. We're over an hour, but I want to get your idea on some of on hockey, on your perspective.
Yeah,
We talked a little bit about why you watch hockey, why it's fast pace. You're on
absolutely.
offense 1 second, and then you give up a goal another second. I'm more knowledgeable in like baseball, football, basketball. Some of the
Sure.
more popular sports here. What are some player comparisons, some team comparisons
Yeah.
that we can kind of wrap our head around in the NHL world?
For sure. I mean, I think it's the NHL world is such an interesting, like, kind of space right now, because you very much have this, like, old guard, like this generation of players, the Ovechkin, Crosby, like that era, those guys are starting to retire, while also breaking records on the way out, which is
Mhm.
unbelievable. I mean, I think watching Alex Ovechkin do what he does every single night at this age. I mean, the guy broke his leg last year and he was out for 4 weeks. There is no sport, there's no athlete probably in any sport that I think could come back from a broken leg in 4 weeks. I still can't fathom that he did that. And then guess what? He later that season broke the all-time scoring record. It was one of the most unthinkable, like, everyone was like, oh yeah, like, you know, Ovechkin, 890, whatever it was, 896. They're like, yeah, no one's ever going to break that. Well, like, Ovechkin just did. And he did it 2 months after having a broken leg. Like, it's truly unfathomable. So you have, like, all of that going on with kind of those guys in their latter, like, the back half of their careers. And as you see with Celebrini, and, you're seeing a lot, obviously Connor McDavid's kind of like the headliner name
Yep.
of the young stars, but there's so much youth. You got the Hughes brothers as well.
There's three of
You
them,
know,
right? Or is there two?
it
I think there's
is.
three.
Ooh,
There's
now you're
Jack.
Jack Quinn.
I think
Oh,
there's
and Luke.
three.
There is Luke as well. I
Yeah.
totally forget about Luke. That's apologies.
Yeah.
But yeah. So, and then you got, like, Trevor Zegras as well. Very hot name as well. Of young talent coming into the league. So it's kind of it's like a fun time to get in and kind of see, like, the path that those older guys have laid for kind of the young, youth. And I mean, over the last couple of years, the storyline has been, will Connor McDavid get his Stanley Cup, and will he do it with Edmonton like he's always wanted to and has kind of committed to? And He's had every opportunity. We got a game 7 last year with him and with that Edmonton team in the Stanley Cup final, which was complete cinema. I mean, it was one of the more intense, emotional games of hockey I think I've ever seen played. And that's impressive. It's really fun to kind of see that come to fruition, all these younger guys, getting these opportunities early on in their career. I would say too, the other flip side of that is we're in the after this kind of reign from Tampa Bay when they won a handful of Stanley Cups in a row. Getting away from that, we're now getting to kind of this new era of all right, who's going to kind of the next dominant team going to be? The Maple Leafs are going to continue to be great during the regular season and probably not play very well during the playoffs. Winnipeg seems to have kind of a similar feel about them. The Florida Panthers are still pretty solid. The Bruins had one of their worst seasons in recent memory last year, but now they're back on top early this season. You have the expansion, obviously, with the Mammoth and the Kraken being added, over the last couple of years, and they're not nothing either. They're kind of going about the Vegas model, rather than trying to build a franchise. They're kind of hopping in and being competitive right away, which is exciting. So
yeah, I remember when Vegas first did their first year as an expansion team, they went to the Stanley Cup Finals.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
They'd won that, right?
They lost to
They
the Washington Capitals in 5 games.
Okay, the
year,
Caps.
but
Okay. And I know some people were, if I remember correctly, people were kind of pissed about that format and how that team was.
It was very much like a new kids on the block situation.
They were kind of handed a really good roster.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So it definitely has been interesting to see how both Seattle and Utah have, I don't want to say copied that model, but have tried to follow a similar model, and trying to be immediately successful. But I don't think it's a bad idea because obviously, especially in the NHL, you got to kind of capture fans early. Especially when you're coming into a new city that hasn't had that before. I think Vegas has done a great job. Vegas has done better than any other. I mean, definitely done better than the Raiders, and I think we'll obviously probably do better than whatever the hell is going on with the Athletics currently, as they try and enter that city as well. But I think that the Golden Knights have done a really good job of securing hockey fans early, especially in a place that you wouldn't necessarily market to be a very hockey forward town. So they've done a really good job with that, I think, and it's just been interesting to see. And I think that, I think you're at a really good point to start following hockey currently because you have so much young talent that these are guys that we're going to be watching for the next 10 to 15 years, I think pretty easily, similar to kind of the Crosby and Ovechkin type, era. I think that we're very much primed for having at least 4 to 6 of these, these stars that we see as young kids right now being, in the league consistently for the next 10 or 15 years.
Playing for a while.
Yeah.
And then another thing with the expansion, right? If you make it tough to build a strong team for a league that you kind of want to start ramping up how much interest in it's receiving and gaining more fans, it's not going to help if you've had, right, because the Vegas was an expansion team pretty recently.
Yeah, within 7 years ago, I think.
Right?
Yeah, no, well, because it was 18 was the first year, so it was 17, 18.
So within 10 years.
Yeah.
And then you have the Mammoths just did it, and then the Kraken just did a couple years ago as well. If you have 3 teams on top of the however many teams are going through their rebuilding phase, that's probably going to add up to be close to a third or a half of your league. And people are already bad-mouthing how much they hate watching teams just tank because you just watch a terrible product. And then those guys have to play good teams, and then it just results in horrible games. And we're seeing that at the baseball level, right? The White Sox and other teams not spending. So,
for sure.
Yeah, I think there is a positive to letting them have the option of being able to compete right off the bat. Yeah, especially having to build a foundation with that fan base too.
And then, but I think the only thing I would add to that too is I think the NHL has done a really good job. As sad as it was for me, from a nostalgic perspective, and them going away from the NBC media rights deal, moving over to ESPN has been, I think, really good because it gives a lot of fans access to watch their favorite teams at all times, through their streaming platforms with ESPN Plus. And then on top of that, I mean, they've got these Tuesday night hockey nights pretty secured, right? And that I think is a good thing for hockey. It's for it to be the thing that if someone is just trying to watch sports on a Tuesday evening during the week and they don't really have anything else. Exactly. And then you flip it on and
Baseball.
that's what's on is hockey's on, I think that's a good thing.
I agree.
It used to take some effort to seek out hockey on a national basis, and now it doesn't. And I think that that's a really good move by the league to kind of slide in at a time that there was a lot of changeover, obviously, with the NBA going over to NBC mostly. Even some of the college basketball rights have shifted. Turner Sports has started to pick up a lot of that stuff, but to go away from that and to be on the sports channel, right? For the NHL and to have your own segments on their morning shows and things like that, having a personality like PK Subban, be a little bit of like the spokesperson for your league, like the one that goes on the morning talk show and the ones that have national attention. I think they've done a really good job in kind of executing that game plan from a media perspective as well. And I think it's going to continue to put the league in front of a lot of more people's faces than it typically would. You also can't forget, like, you have the Winter Olympics coming up this year. This is the first time the NHL players have played in the Olympics since 2014, which is awesome. Like, it's going to be a great setup. The league's taking like a month off for it, which I think is awesome. And it's really exciting because you're going to get some pretty high level, hockey, obviously, at a very national perspective. And I think if you were to ask the average person, like, what their biggest memory of hockey is, maybe there's something with a local, Stanley Cup championship moment, but I think a lot of people too are also going to say Miracle, and Miracle on Ice and reference that. And so international hockey definitely, as you saw with Four Nations, kind of brings out a different level of emotion from a lot of people. And so I think all of these things culminating into Olympics, you get back on that national scene with the best players, I just think it's going to be a really nice setup for the NHL going forward. I think they've executed this all on a very solid timeline.
Yeah, they've definitely put a ton of thought into it. All right, Shibel, that's pretty much all I got for you. I want to make sure I wrap it up as it's pretty late for you right now.
No, not too bad. But yeah, Spencer, I really appreciate you having me on. It's always a pleasure, my man.
Hope you all enjoyed that episode with Evan Shibel. It was a little bit on the lengthier side. I try to keep the perspectives changing for you guys, bringing in different sports, not just hearing all my perspectives. That's kind of what the whole pod is about, is making sure you hear all the information so you can kind of create a narrative and an idea of what you want to believe in sports. But make sure to check us out on Instagram at the rewind_pod or on YouTube at the rewind3. You can also just look up the Rewind podcast. And then be sure to listen to us on Spotify, Amazon Music. I'm trying to get on some other channels as well so I can reach more listeners. And then on Instagram at the rewind_pod. If you guys just interact with that post, really helps me a ton. And then be sure to give us star ratings on Spotify and Amazon Music. I appreciate everyone that's keeping up with my content. I look forward to more episodes in the future. Thank you all for listening or watching. Peace.